What are the factors responsible for low consumption of dairy in Nigeria from your perspective? What are the factors?
Okay, thank you for that question. So basically, we have several factors that could result in the low milk consumption that we experience in Nigeria. One is poverty, we have ignorance, we have socio-demographic factors like the age, the sex, household income, the educational level. Then we also have consumers' perceptions and attitudes towards the consumption of milk products. So let me just take the aspect of ignorance and poverty. So studies have shown that a higher educational level is associated with an increased knowledge and awareness about a product. So in Nigeria here, our literacy level is about 62%. And the literacy level is lower for females. And females are the caregivers. They are in charge of food preparation and all of that in the home. And if they don't have adequate knowledge and awareness about the consumption of the benefits of milk, then it could actually lead to the low consumption levels that we are experiencing. Then on the issue of ignorance, on the issue of poverty. Poverty it has a vicious circle with ignorance, and it's also linked to diseases. Okay, so the poverty has to do with low purchasing power of different households, and you know what the kind of situation we find ourselves in the country. We have high rates of poverty. We have food insecurity. We have a high inflation rate. We have high unemployment rate. Even for the workers that are working, they are hardly being paid their salary. So all of this reduce the purchasing power of households, and this could result in the low milk consumption rates that are being experienced. Also, we know that most of the milk we consume are imported. About 60% of the milk we consume are imported. Just about 40% is produced in Nigeria. And you know, for the imported ones, since they are majorly what we have around, the cost may also limit some people to the consumption of milk products. And so this has to be looked into. Thank you.
Do you agree with her? And what do you think are the factors responsible for low milk consumption in the West? And are there myths that we need to debunk? Because I know, for instance, they say if you give a child egg, he will still, we've had some funny myths like that. Are there myths that could be barriers to milk consumption in the West? And then we'll hear from you, Dr. Salisu.
Thank you, Ngozi. I will pick it from where Dr. Okeju stopped. From the presentation we have had in the course of this conference, we have recognized the high level of poverty and the high cost of nutritious diets in this country. And if we say that about 91% cannot afford nutritious diets, and we look at the cost of milk, then we know that for many households, milk is simply a luxury food. Any of them cannot afford it. And we have also to look at it from, actually the Nigerian statistics actually show it. The Nigerian Living Standards Survey shows the distribution of milk consumption across the geopolitical zones. And this actually reflects that we have higher consumption in the north because they raise several livestock that produce milk. Whereas in the south, it is actually least in southwest. And likely because many areas are urban, we don't raise livestock, many people cannot afford the processed milk, and we don't actually have animals that produce milk. And in this part of the country too, access to local dairy products, cheese, Fura and Co is also low compared to what we have in the north. And this actually contributes to the low consumption of milk in this area. So in this regard, we can see that low production contributes towards the lower level of milk intake in this area. And that is largely because many of them cannot afford the processed milk and local production is very, very low. So from this angle, we know that it is less available and less affordable compared to other foods. So many people will rather go for foods that are filling and take care of hunger rather than the highly nutritious food that we actually are promoting. Then again, we must equally look at, you mentioned the issue of myths and misconception. Yes, while we know that some people avoid milk largely because of lactose intolerance, but this actually a very small percentage of the population. So we don't have any strong myths against milk consumption because very few people actually have cases of lactose intolerance. So looking at these aspects, the low production level, the high cost of milk, and of course, we cannot rule out ignorance because even when people have the power, they may not actually know the right food. And I will say that we all contribute into this because though we have dietary guidelines in Nigeria, we have failed to actually define in a local context what I mean by our locality, what any diet should comprise of. And also, we don't actually have any standardized food baskets. If I have 20,000 to go to the market, I purchase what I feel is good for me. If another person has 20,000, he can purchase. So we don't actually have on that platform to educate people what a standard food basket for the family is, to include all those things which would have helped them in their purchasing and food nutrition decision making. And this actually has to do, yes, like as we mentioned, that issue of ignorance, and many people actually fail. Many also fail to set their priority rights. So I agree that we have such cases. But again, we must equally know from the aspect of what people value also matter. Let me point it to you clearly that apart from few foods in our own social context in the West, milk does not go with many foods. In Southeast, South-South, Southwest, for adults, most of our food are based on root and tubers, which may not go with milk. Whereas in the North, their foods are actually largely based on cereals, which can actually go with. So apart from breakfast, so we can actually, while we have come, you are looking at Ashway because it's already part of the way of life of many, although that is changing. That is also changing. However, we are actually, as professionals, we are actually the ones that should equally make nutrition part of their fabrics. So that is where they see Ashway, they can actually see nutrition issue as that. But of course, there are several aspects we also need to define. What are the food matrices that milk can complement in our local context? We have to make that well defined to equally promote it as part of every meal. So,
fantastic, fantastic. We'll come back to that point. Let's hear from Dr. Salisu now. Dr. Salisu, why is milk consumption low in the North? The cows are there.
Thank you very much, Ngozi. I think my colleagues have already mentioned a lot of why the milk consumption issues are so low in Nigeria. I totally agree. Of course, it's a survey stated, but when Dr. Ario mentioned that the consumption of the milk is higher, because he mentioned some of the reasons. So when you take Nigerian context, it's low. When you go regional, we'll say it's higher in the North. For that simple reason that he has mentioned. Even though the way the milk is produced and consumed is not in the right way, but we've known since ancient time that if you are from the North, this Pradanono is like a household name. Everywhere you go, Pradanono, all over the world, you can trace it back to the northern part of the country. And that's where possibly we're opportune to be getting our milk or milk products from. And unfortunately, that system of milk production is not the conventional way of doing it. Therefore, the production is quite low to pay for what you need to consume I mean, in a day or in a year, to go by the recommendation of the World Health Organization. So if you look at it at that angle, you will say, one, we are lacking policies from government. If I look at it that way, since you have this opportunity of so many people that are in prison, of course, they are herdsmen that are doing this. So if we have policies that will guide on supporting these small scales that can take up these things to boost the production, then I think it's a way that we can now manage to have more, because the more we have possibly will lead to increase in demand in the market, and possibly the prices that we are talking about because of poverty might come a little bit down that every household can afford. So that's one thing. Then, of course, the other thing that I may think in the notes is what Dr. Ario mentioned about genetic aspect of it. Of course, it's minimal, but we still cannot count it out. The issue of lactose intolerance, he has already portrayed on that. One other thing that I may add, this issue of insecurity. If you look at 10 years or more than 10 years back in the northern part of the country, of course, we have pockets of insecurity issues all over the country. But then this issue of getting people to be food insecure, especially with this displacement of people, this little production we are talking about that is making the north to have a little higher consumption than the north has now been down. I'm sure if we are going to have the survey now, the story will be different, because those people that are getting that milk, even though not conventional, making us have a bit of higher consumption, are not there because of this insecurity situation that we have in the north. So the ignorance is there, the poverty is there, of course, direction needed from the government is there. In fact, the guideline, our dietary guideline that Dr. Ario mentioned, we need to review, we need to revise it. That's one thing also that we have to take up from here. We need to, that guideline is a bit, or we need to go back to it and see how best we can also create awareness. Because there was a time I was trying to find out, even within the nutrition space, if not many people are aware that Nigeria has guidelines, dietary guidelines. So you can imagine what will happen in the general public. So let me stop here for now, and hopefully, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salisu. You made 3 big points there: ignorance, poverty, and the insecurity in the north has even reduced your milk consumption in the north even lower than what it used to be. I'll keep that in my left hand and we'll come back to that. Okay, my next question will go to Dr. Salisu, and I want this to be very brief so that we can wrap up. Soy milk or soy drink, as it is called in Europe, because in Europe, they don't believe any milk that is not from, the mammary glands is milk. So we'll call it soy drink. There are proponents that canvass for soy milk as a better nutritional substitute for dairy. Can you clarify which has a better nutritional profile between cow's milk and soy milk that we have people canvassing for?
Thank you very much, Ngozi, for this question. I'm sure nature made it that we have variety of foods, variety of drinks, variety of everything that we need to use. This is done for a purpose. So soy drink or soy milk, whatever you take it, and then cow's milk, they are 2 entirely different things. Okay, even from the point of where they're coming from. Generic, you will see that soy is plant-based, or the cow is animal. So this is now cow milk we're talking about. Even though we can have the soy drink as something like milk, just like we can have from other plant-based milks, let's say tiger nut, let's say almond, for example, but then the composition are different. They may be common in some compositions, but then one may be higher than the other. So the question you raise, whether which one is better, is not a question that one can say A is better than B or C is better than D, but put it into context and then depending on the circumstance that we're in. Okay, if I give an example, cow milk has the higher fat content when you compare with the soy milk. Now there are a lot of saturated fats within the same cow milk that also we are advocating for reduction in the intake of. Yeah. Now, when you take the calcium aspect of it, you will see that the cow milk has about 30 times more calcium than the soy milk. Okay. And then when you look at the protein aspect of it, the cow milk is about 100 more in terms of milligram per gram of the protein content. And not only the protein content, but when you look at the amino acid profile, you'll see that the essential amino acids that are in the cow milk are much more than the essential amino acids in the soy milk. So give and take, when you look at it, you find that, okay, one in one way has this, one in the other has none. Okay, another example, for example, the lactose we are talking about. For some people, lactose intolerance is what is making them to, okay, the soy milk don't have lactose. So we can tilt to soy milk so that we avoid the lactose intolerance while we are getting some of the benefits that can be derived from milk. The fiber content, if somebody is after fiber, this animal-based milk don't have fiber in it. It's approximately 0 fiber, but you have some fiber in the soy milk. So if we look at the major things that we normally portray in milk, the protein and the calcium, the phosphorus content, you find all these are better off in the cow milk as compared to the soy milk. So if you are taking in that context, you'll be safe to say, okay, I better go in the direction of cow milk.
It is actually true that lactose intolerance is common amongst the Black population. I'll start by giving some statistics. Worldwide or globally, the prevalence of lactose intolerance is about 65%. Then if you come down to Africa, the prevalence is about 85 to 90%. In Kenya and Ghana, the prevalence ranges between 85 to 90% and even up to 98% in Kenya. Then here in Nigeria, about 87% of our population are lactose intolerant. So lactose intolerant is very common amongst Africans. So what is this lactose intolerance we're talking about? Individuals who are lactose intolerant cannot digest lactose, the sugar that is found in milk, because they lack the enzyme lactase. And so when they consume dairy products that have lactose, they could develop gastrointestinal disorders like abdominal pain, bloating, flatulence, and even diarrhea. So, but it doesn't mean that those that are lactose intolerant cannot consume dairy products. They can actually consume the fermented dairy products like the yogurt and cheese. So this one, as a result of the fermentation, the lactose, the lactase is there to digest the lactose, if there is any found in those fermented products. Then they could also consume the lactose-free dairy products. In this lactose-free dairy product, the lactose aspect has been filtered out from the milk, so they can actually then other ways they can consume, get the benefits of milk is they can consume other milk alternatives, like we talked about the soy milk. Here we call it soy milk, but in Europe it is referred to as soy drink, because anything that does not have milk component is not referred to as dairy. So those are the ways that lactose intolerance individuals could benefit from dairy consumption.
Number one is we have to actually understand the problem very well. In nutrition, we don't jump into action. We need to understand the problem, the magnitude, before we can actually go into the intervention. However, taking it from some frameworks, we know every issue about access to food. We have to talk about availability. We have to talk about accessibility, including economic accessibility and physical accessibility. So looking at this with the level of our dairy sector development, we know we are not yet there. Until we can see, because looking at the data that we have, fresh meat consumption, local consumption is actually what is higher in the north. And that means that it is not actually the processed one that pushed them up. So these are the areas we need to look at. We need to make it more available and more accessible. Like we have equally identified that ignorance is one of the reasons. We also need to promote nutrition education across all sectors, with emphasis on inclusion of dairy in the family meals. Likewise, when we also look at what we can do, it's differ with sector. In nutrition society, for example, we still need to actually play our role as a society to actually see that what we promote strategy that make people to understand what they should consume and what should be included in the family food purchase every week, every year, because it is when we have this thing at home that it can be part of the meal. And in the part of the industry, I think they need to do more in promoting local production. And by this, they make it more affordable to the people. In houses where, when we say about 91% of the houses cannot afford $4 per day for feeding, and we think that they will now commit about half of that fund to provide meat for the member of the household, we are not yet there. So we need to make it more affordable and available. Then nutrition education, we have to promote it. And as we strengthen the collaboration between the various sectors, each sector can actually play its role to see that we address all the bottlenecks that makes meat unavailable and unacceptable to the people. Then we can work around to improve the situation.
Fantastic. Dr. Salisu, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much, Ngozi. And thank you, Dr. Ario has already said it. I will just say some few things can be added to what Dr. Ario has mentioned. As strategies that we need to take in order to improve our milk production. Number one, we need to empower women. From the North perspective, if I take it, most of these herdsmen that are milking cows are female. Now, if we empower them in terms of knowledge, the best practices of doing things, how best they can milk, how best they can preserve, how best they can market, how can they improve production in terms of the quantity and the quality of the milk, that would be a good way to now improve probably the availability or and affordability of the milk we are talking about. And then taking forward, the next strategy will be on government. I mentioned an issue of policies. I'm not sure whether I have some policies that are speaking directly to milk production. But I'm happy, while I was watching yesterday, they did this Kaduna Investment 6.0. For those that are from Kaduna and those that are interested in economic development, probably might have followed. One thing that I liked, the government of Kaduna is trying to connect with some international companies in order to see how they can revolutionize the farming, catering, and the milking processes so that they can now bring small-scale industries to go into these businesses. In their own context, they are looking at the economic aspect of it. As I was watching, I was laughing. My perspective is the nutritional aspect of it. You are going to improve the availability of the milk and also get people to be empowered, employ people, but then you improve the availability so that the access will be there for people to get more milk to consume. And the other thing that we may look at is this issue of insecurity. We still have to keep connecting things to the security issues. If you can target it, we'll be in peace. Some people will be able to farm, people will be able to produce. That's another strategy that we have to take to also address this issue. Of course, Dr. Ario mentioned education, nutrition education at community, at household, etc. And then the other one is for those companies that are engaged in dairy products, services or production services. I think still the government, Dr. Patricia mentioned about this of import issues, not what it takes when people have to import so many things. I mean, for production of service and services that are required in the country. So if we find a way to make it easier for them, as we are also building our local capacities, then that will be great strategy in trying to address the issue of low milk consumption in the country. I think I will stop here for the sake of time.
The moment insecurity came into the picture, it just wasn't an already, a big problem. Very quickly, you want to add a point to what they've said?
Okay, so for me, I think one of the strategies is first of all to encourage exclusive breastfeeding. That is where human infants get their first source of milk. So we should protect, support, and promote exclusive breastfeeding. Then the other aspect is we could use other alternative sources like goat's milk, sheep milk, buffalo milk. I don't know how well it is being researched, but we can look into such alternatives. Then we could also have direct cash transfers in the form of milk stamps. So these milk stamps can be given to children, and then they go to designated places to collect milk in exchange for these food stamps. Then we should also look into the pastoral methods or systems of dairy production. We should move to more commercialized methods. So
I'll just wrap up. But the summary of all we have said is that Nigeria indeed can do more with milk in our diets. Looking at our predominantly carbohydrate-based diets, we can do more with milk. As milk proteins are considered high quality proteins. Of course, we know the essential amino acid profile is top-notch. And in addition, milk consumption will help lower our healthcare costs. It's just a vicious cycle. So many problems contributing even to healthcare issues or challenges amongst the Nigerian populace. For lactose intolerant persons, they can consume fermented dairy, yogurt, cheese, soy milk, or soy drink, as it's called in Europe. And then lastly, nutrition education cannot be overemphasized. We can do more. And as nutrition professionals in the hall, we are throwing the challenge to you to do more within your spheres of influence to change the narrative. It's a bigger problem, like Dr. Ariyo mentioned. We have to first understand the problem, the magnitude, and come up with strategies to fix this. But while that is going on at the national level, even within our spheres of influence, let's do as much as we can to educate our patients, the people that we come across, our communities, to prioritize milk as a major key part of their diet, with all the benefits that it has to offer. Thank you very much, my distinguished panelists, and thank you, audience.